Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing sort of the post-COVID travel scene, if you will, the sort of lay of the land, and discussing immigration versus immigration. First thing I would like to say is, I don't really like when people use this term post-COVID, or I really dislike the term the new normal for a lot of different reasons. But I do understand, like, COVID-19, or I should say the government response to COVID-19 had a tremendous impact on logistics pertaining to travel. That's just a fact. The reason for this video is that I don't think that it's overly correct to view COVID-19 as, like AD versus BC. It's not a moment like that. I honestly think 50 years from now, yeah, COVID will sort of be mentioned, but the Spanish flu was a major event as well, and yes, it had a tremendous impact within sort of the 5 years, if you were comparing the 5 years before and the 5 years after. But I think with COVID, at least my opinion, I do think this will fade away more than people right now on all sides of the issue really give it credit for. But one thing that it has brought to the forefront is understanding the different dynamic associated with international travel. There is a difference between immigration with an E and immigration with an I. And with COVID, or I should say the response to COVID, the various governments around the world and their regulations pertaining to inbound and outbound travel with respect to COVID, you've really seen how this interplay on a much more micro level than I think we've ever seen in an international travel context, maybe truly ever. Immigration, you don't often hear that word used, but that's when you're leaving a place. That's when you're going abroad. You often hear it in a historical context. You'll hear about the émigrés from the French Revolution. These were folks that just sort of got out of France, in some of their cases, while the getting was good, so they didn't lose their heads, and got to Britain or got to other places outside of France. But you often, it's not necessarily fleeing, but it's just leaving a country for whatever reason. Now, under certain circumstances, it may be really terrible reasons. You may have a refugee situation, but in some circumstances, it's just leaving a country, departing a country. Right now, there are departure protocols that frankly haven't been around for a long time or ever at all. Meanwhile, immigration is the process of entering a country. And we definitely see more protocols associated with this, especially with Thailand and the US, that we've ever seen since I've ever been dealing with immigration law. But the long story short, the reason for this video, it's a good idea to understand this as sort of a bifurcated proposition or a two-phase process. There's the process of leaving a country, and then there's the process of entering or being admitted to another country. And this overall process can be rather cumbersome on both sides. And it often requires a really meticulous approach to looking at how you're going to get from point A to point B, or maybe I should say point A to point C, and B in the middle. For example, a country where you have to lay over. That may have ramifications. We've seen that a lot with travel between the United States and Thailand and vice versa, where there's a third-party country you have to lay over in. So again, the purpose of this video is just to provide some insight as far as context, nuance, and sort of, I hope, a bit of a paradigm shift with future travelers in understanding, at least for the next year, probably 18 months, you got to really focus on the difference here between the protocols for leaving a country versus the protocols for the country that's going to be admitting you and having to deal with being in compliance with all of them.